my world of this whole car thing started summer of '09. I was featured in Automobile Magazine for car spotting. That was 15 years ago. What happened was I used to drive around Atlanta with my camera in the days before cell phones had cameras. I would drive around with a giant brick digital camera and take pictures of cars. In fact, before I even had a car here, when I was a freshman in college, I would take the bus to Buckhead to take pictures of cars. And you know something? In retrospect, it was an amazing time to do it. It was just pre-recession. That was '06, '07, '08. I saw crazy stuff. Super America, Countach's, I saw a Maserati MC12 driving around. Like, it was wild. And I remember the recession hit Buckhead hard. All the Phantoms, like we used to see a Mercy a day. No joke, because I still have like the photo bucket links to all my, no joke, we saw probably 35 different Mercies driving around Atlanta in that time. And then '09 happened and a lot of that stuff was gone. That was like my thing. I was like taking pictures of exotic cars was my thing. And I'll tell you, for a kid from Denver, when I grew up in Denver, we didn't have exotic cars. When I was a kid, Lamborghini did not have a dealership in Denver. Rolls-Royce did not have a dealership in Denver. Aston Martin did not have. There were none of those cars. There was a Ferrari dealer, but it was also Bentley, Maserati, and Lotus in one little building. Like, you didn't see cool cars. And so I came to Atlanta as a 16, 18-year-old, and it was like, oh my God, like, this is insane. And especially in that period, like, rap was huge. Like, you would see Young Jeezy's green Mercy with the green wheels, Verde Ithaca. That was so cool. Jermaine Dupri drive around his balloon white LP64. There were all sorts of people. Like, you saw them all the time. Akon had that white SLR. Like, there were all these guys. So that was a huge deal. I came here, it was a big thing. And so I was taking pictures of exotic cars. That was like my life at that time. And I got really well known for it in this community. And then I wrote to Automobile Magazine and I was like, hey guys, I do this. Come like do a story about me because it's kind of fun. And so they sent a writer out. His name was Preston Lerner, and he did features on like kind of weird oddball characters in the car community. And so he would do like a guy who raced a 50s car at a dirt track. That was like his type of article. And he flew to Atlanta with a photographer, and he sat in my passenger seat in my Audi A4 for a weekend, and we drove around car spotting. So he wrote this article, and I was then known as like the car spotter, and it kind of got national. I decided, because I had to cash it on my car spotting fame, I started this website called chasingexotics.com. And my thought was, at the time, car spotting was just kind of becoming a thing. And actually, it was pre-Instagram. Like, it was kind of ahead of its time in the sense that, like, these days you go to London or Monaco and there's like 50 kids with big cameras running after Diablos, right? Like, it is crazy. But I remember I went to Monaco in 10 and there was nobody. I was the only guy who was like running after cars because there wasn't a place to post pictures. Like, I was doing it for my own personal interest. It was stupid, actually. I was like, oh my God, I just saw a Veyron. I can share this with no one. I started this Chasing Exotics so that other car spotters from around could post their pictures in one car spotter place. And I ran it. It was a web forum, and I ran it with VBulletin at the time, like Ferrari Chat or whatever, all these other websites. And people did go, and it was organized by region. And so the Southeast, the Southern California, they all had regions, Asia, Europe, they all had regions, and people actually posted. It became quite popular. I don't even know where they went. I've never been to Hong Kong, but there was a guy or two. And the guy in Hong Kong, I actually thought about him like last year and wondered like what happened to him. But there was a guy in Hong Kong who would stand on some bridge in some nice area, I assume. I don't know anything. And just fire off pictures. I mean, there was like no limit. There was like no limit on what you could see. It was like Car Week. Like, he would see an F40 one day, he would see an F50 the next day, he'd see a pair of Enzos. Like, there was no limit. And especially in the pre-Instagram days, it was crazy. Because like now you pop on Instagram and you can see at any time there's 3 guys driving their Wyras and whatever. But back then, it was like, wow. Like, he would see vintage stuff. I mean, it was like there was no end to it. And I remember thinking Hong Kong must really be like a paradise. And I bet it is. But that was really cool. And I do think that in the pre-Instagram days, it was pretty cool to see that stuff. And also it was sort of the pre-hypercar days. The Veyron was just out. There wasn't that much expensive stuff. The Zonda was around, but not in the US. None of the really crazy hypercars had come out. Like, there was no 918 Spider. There was no P1. None of that stuff existed. Like, we were just getting into some of the really crazy cars. And so being able to like see some of this stuff driving was kind of a new thing for a lot of people. And that was neat. One of the things I love most about Instagram is it has made these cars ubiquitous. When I was a kid, if you saw a 355, it changed your month. And now it's like the cars are a lot more accessible and more around. And I think that's really like cool. I think that's a good thing. There was a webcam in South Beach, Miami that was just a webcam. Like you could, if you wanted to see what the weather was like in South Beach, or if you were missing your vacation, you could like check it out. There were guys who would sit there and watch the cars go by. That's true. And occasionally a Veyron would go by, or occasionally a Testarossa would go by, or whatever. And then they would screenshot the webcam and post it. I totally forgot that was a thing. The special thing about that webcam too was at that time, a lot of webcams refreshed like every 30 seconds, but that one was live. Like it was poor quality, but it was actually going, and so you could watch the cars. Or maybe it was close to live or something like that. There was a Nürburgring webcam that would look at like the starting gate, like not the starting line, but like where you would enter the track. And often the Nürburgring is rented out for manufacturer days or whatever, but on open days, it was crazy the stuff that would gather there. And there was Carrera GTs I remember seeing, and there was even like it wasn't on Chasing Exotics, but there was some like Nürburgring cam like greatest hits thread somewhere on the internet. The one day someone drove an F40, somebody saw it there on the cam, and those were the days. The goal was never to make money. It didn't cost much to set it up. You set a domain name, you set vBulletin, and it's a few $100. Like it didn't cost anything, but it didn't make anything. It was just kind of to unite car spotters. But eventually I got a job. I kind of had to stop car spotting. I didn't have time really to do it as much anymore. And I kind of let Chasing Exotics sort of falter. Like I wasn't really paying attention to it. And I get this message from this guy, Larry, who is a car photographer. His current Instagram handle is Winning Auto. His photography is like Winning Automotive Photographer. He is one of the great car photographers, truthfully. Like at the time he was 13 and he was just a kid in Atlanta, but he has now become like one of the great car photographers, to the point where his photos are as good or better than any manufacturer press pictures. He takes incredibly high quality exotic car images for dealerships around here to sell cars. He travels to take pictures. It is like amazing, the shots that he takes. I get this message from him one day. He's 14. He's like, hey man, I want to buy Chasing Exotics. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna cash in. But it's Larry. He's 14, doesn't have any money. So I'm like, all right, well, what do you want to spend? It's like $100 to buy it. I didn't care. I just like was busy that day and didn't reply to him. He texted me 3 hours later. All right, 150. I'm like, oh. He texted me. I swear to God, this is what happened. I wish I still had the text. 2 hours later, text me again. Okay, 250. I was like at dinner. Like it wasn't like I was like trying to negotiate. I like just wasn't responding because I was like busy that afternoon. And so he keeps upping himself. So eventually I cut him off. I was like, Larry, look, for $300 you can have, I was tired of just the day-to-day onerous maintaining of it. I was like, Larry, whatever his last offer was at that point, I was like, that's it. Stop texting, you can have it, it's yours. So he buys it and like did nothing with it. Like a couple of months later, it was kind of offline and it never existed. That was the end of the story. Larry just like, I don't know, Larry, why did you run Chasing Exotics into the ground? But here's a little interesting conclusion. This year, I haven't seen Larry since then. This year, I go to Villa d'Este Concours, which is a great event in Italy. Walking on the street and somebody's like, hey, Doug. People always come up to me, especially at car events. And so I'm like, oh, hey, nice to see you. Here's a picture. And I'm always nice. But and when some guy goes, hey, Doug, how you doing? And I look up and it's Larry. And you know what I said to him? Larry, why'd you screw Chasing Exotics? What were you doing? Actually, we had like a long chat in front of Villa d'Este, me and him, like catching up on I was like, I can't believe you still exist. And apparently he has like a real job now, but flew there like on his own dime to go to this event and is like still killing it in the car spotting world, but especially in the car photography world. And we've actually corresponded a little bit on Instagram, like, wow, Larry, this is an amazing photo set. But to my knowledge, he still owns the domain. So in the world of Instagram, I think Chasing Exotics is less important than it once was, but it's there, it's out there somewhere. You can get Larry to go and set it back up again.
When you're buying a pre-owned car, it is critical to get a professional mechanic to inspect it every time. And so the Lemon Squad is the easiest way to do that and the most affordable. Generally within 24 or 48 hours, they can get somebody on site anywhere in the country with their nationwide network of trained professional mechanics that are going to give you a ton of pictures and a full report of exactly what's going on with this car. It's a great way to avoid scams, and it's a great way to get a very clear picture of the car that you're buying, and this ammunition can make you the shrewdest negotiator negotiator of all. It also makes the drive home a whole lot easier and keeps a little bit more money in your pocket, and I know that you'll love the results from the Lemon Squad. So check them out now at the link in the description below for a special discount and to make sure that you're buying the car that you think you are.